The experience of the TAP our grant proposal, plus our other experiences of collaborating on journal articles and conferences and workshops and more, were that we were able to pull together on time-bounded, tangible projects. And that has inspired us really to experiment with a new format for today's working group meeting. So the idea is that we now give way to members to pitch projects related to the circular economy and society. The aim of this is to try and mobilize a coalition of the willing and the able to work together on projects over the next few months. So the idea is that that we would then break out into smaller teams, collaborate on projects, and report back on those projects at the next working group meeting in the new year. But by that point, it might be that projects have achieved their goals. Whatever they're working on might have been complete. They may decide to carry on working together for another few months. They might pivot to the aim of the project, or they might just bring it to a close. So projects might combine. All these outcomes are okay, and going forward, if you're not able to contribute now, there will be new projects going ahead for those who are sort of unavailable to commit in the short term. So thank you to those who've taken the plunge and suggested projects. So we have a few. So they are our pioneers, not our guinea pigs. They're the pioneering people. And let's have a go with this format. We accept that it's an experiment, but we want to try it and see how it goes. So we're going to give those pitching around about 2 or 3 minutes, try and keep it quite short, to introduce their project and to explain a little bit what it's about. Then we'll break out into sort of 5 minutes or so of discussion. So the idea is during that 5-minute period, colleagues can express interest in an idea, say how they might want to contribute to it, or perhaps how it could be taken forward in a slightly different way or combined with another idea. So we'll just use those two sort of basic ideas of brainstorming, no criticism, cross-fertilization of ideas. So here's my pictures slide. And the first one we're going to go over, and we've had two project ideas from Sarah, Jennifer, and Charlotte. So I should have given you a heads up that I was going to come to you first. But you've got two ideas, so you might want to do them separately. That's okay, or perhaps you're talking to one of them each. But we'll give way to you. I shall stop sharing my screen now in case you want to share yours.
I don't think we have anything that we want to share.
Oh, okay.
But, I hope that's all right. Fundamentally, we had two ideas, so I'll present them separately, and then if that turns into something everyone wants to discuss collectively, that's fine. The first one is based on this idea of pooling pedagogical or teaching strategies and tools and methods. So this is really less tied to our common research areas and more to trying to help figure out how to disseminate this knowledge across undergraduate and graduate levels. One of the biggest challenges we have in the US, at least, is trying to figure out how to fit this in at the appropriate level for first year, second year, third year students. Critical information, critical knowledge, but it has not been really done. I guess it's been done, but we have an opportunity to pool those resources and learn from one another. And so the first item we had is to see if there's interest in creating this collaborative sharing space to generate ideas, to provide support as we're building out new teaching materials and curriculum. And just that's the general idea, not really that related to research. At the same time, though, there might be research opportunities, given that this is a growing and emerging field of how we are approaching the teaching. So, research into instruction and teaching methods that might be different than have conventionally been used. So there is still research and publication opportunity there. Charlotte, if there's anything I've missed, please feel free to jump in. The second idea that we had, and we're framing this as basically the proposal of a sub-working group. So a subgroup of this group here that who would be interested in working on circular economy futures. So using future studies methodologies and visioning and other methods to explore what that future circular economy looks like and how it is experienced for various stakeholders, how it's operationalized, and generally just digging in more to circular futures in general. And so recognizing that's not the entirety of what this working group would do, we were proposing a sub-working group to dig into that and generate project ideas, proposals, and perhaps some collaborative research.
Can I ask something about this?
Mm-hmm.
It is about like building the transformation, or is about creating the vision from analysis, research analysis, or doing it actively with actors? So like a transition governance approach, I would say, where you actually deal with also the organizational practices of developing those future.
I think it can be both. I know that the primary interest we discussed was using future studies methods, which sometimes involve stakeholders and workshopping and other engagement, and sometimes it doesn't. The key idea is that we need, our thinking is that we need to understand and conceptualize what that future actually looks like more comprehensively. So developing the methods for getting to that vision, there could be 1,000 different pathways, but we think that's a key question that this group could really dig into. So open to all ideas, I think, on that.
I am very interested to the aspect of facilitation, including the visioning making, but through the eyes of different actors, and how that, depending on which actors you put in, then the vision, of course, looks quite different. So that's actually the interest I have. It's very, 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 very interesting. It's actually an area which I'm looking into as well. So it's,
yeah, likewise, actually, we had that realization that many of us are probably looking towards that. And so if there's this creates that space.
There is a bit of discussion regarding, in relation between transition management, transition governance, the different methods that there are in the aspect of facilitation of those, making those visions, who is doing it, how you do it, how you can use them, and yeah, whatever. But it's, yeah, I would be actually interested if you do a subgroup to be part of it.
Excellent.
Thank you, Chiara. Let's go to Mary, who's raised a hand.
Yeah, thanks for suggesting this topic. So yeah, very interested to be involved on this. It actually has been working on something to do with futures and practices around circularity, a kind of seed project in between some universities here in the Netherlands. So I think it'd be really interesting to think about what the concepts we generally work with can add to this kind of futuring as well, like, for example, social practices or transitions of concepts, or whatever anybody else is working for. But yeah, really interested to be involved and to think through maybe fleshing out some work packages that could be interesting for having ready to go when we see some funding calls, for example. Yeah.
Thank you, Mary. Charlotte.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Jennifer, for presenting the ideas. I just wanted to add to the kind of the future-oriented subgroup idea is also that we might include very different levels of activity, really. So some activities can be quite concrete. For instance, suggesting a workshop. I would really like to do a flash fiction workshop that I've done in other settings as well. And it's a really nice format for trying to think about quite alternative ways of life and futures and stuff like that. And that would be a very concrete, maybe one-off event that I would like to do with people interested. But it could also include quite bigger projects, as Jennifer is saying, and which Mary and Chiara is also addressing, that we could come together and define project ideas and work together on something more long-term. But you can think about this kind of subgroup as a group that would host both kind of one-off ideas, activities. If there's something about a future orientation that you would like to kind of experiment with, then those activities are very welcome. You don't have to think about it as something where you have to invest a lot of energy and time. I think it should be able to include both kind of levels. So I just wanted to kind of stress that. Thanks.
Thank you, Charlotte. I'm certainly interested in futures. It's been a while since I've taken a futures perspective. Did some work a long time ago, nearly 20 years ago, thinking about how to endogenize technological change and its impact on industrial structure and greenhouse gas emissions. It was one of the first Tyndall Centre climate change projects that went on. So I haven't, although I've not been involved in futures work for a long time, I've sort of maintained an interest in it. So I would be interested in getting back to that. Before we just go back to the teaching platform, Chiara, Mary, do you want to add something?
Oh yeah, just to mention that the European Roundtable Conference on Sustainable Production and Consumption and SCORI, we're hosting it here in Wageningen in 2023, and the theme will be consuming futures. So that's a nice opportunity to put forward some sessions and have a presence here in 2023.
Excellent.
Mary,
thank you, Mary.
Mary, do you have a link to that? Those two?
Not yet. We don't have a website available yet, but we aim to have it early in the new year. Yeah, we'll be putting out a proper announcement.
Great, thank you, Mary. Chiara, is that a new hand?
Yeah, no, I was just to mention that I think it would be very interesting to do workshop like that also, not just on social practices. I mean, as I understood, this is a main topic, but it's also like how the future infrastructure look like in cities, for example, how, I mean, also visually, how do you use the city and the infrastructure, how they will transform, for example, the relation between water, energy, and food, for example, how they become, because it's at the moment, this is actually a very big topic for circular economy, because now they're all sectoralized, they don't interact. So how will it look a future in which there is more circularity and there is more intersections across those infrastructure? Where are the sector going? Where are the professional practices going? Which is the area which I'm more prone to. I'm not so much working with practices in terms of social practices in terms of home and houses, but more on the professional practice perspective. So how would they sector transform? How we will become different? So how they will be visualized in the city and transform from a urban design perspective, for example, or organizational perspective. So this is a kind of this is the area I think it's a mess at the moment, because there's going to be a lot of politics in it, and it's a very interesting topic to there is a need of future vision, because nobody wants to make a step away from what we have now. So then
thank you, Chiara. Let's go quickly to Charlotte and Mel, and then I'd like to bring in Jörg, who's just joined us, because I think we can connect the first topic that Jennifer introduced there around sharing resources, developing resources for teaching. Well, you could extend that sort of beyond university, associated with upskilling people, so people who coming out of jobs in other sectors into the circular economy, and it's related to that work that we mentioned earlier with the EC and Timmermans. So I'll come to Jörg in a minute. I'll just give him a heads up, but before that, we'll go to Charlotte and Mel.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, I just wanted to say that this kind of subgroup on futures doesn't have to address social practices, although I would, of course, argue that social practices are part of everything you're addressing there, Chiara. But you don't have to come at it from a social practice point of view. As long as you have a workshop idea, and if you don't mind facilitating it, I think this kind of subgroup would be a great place to suggest ideas, feel welcome to be quite experimental and try out stuff. That's at least what Jennifer and Sarah and I was hoping that this subgroup could also kind of host. So if you're interested in kind of experimenting with a lot of strange, funny ideas, this is the place to be.
Very nice.
Mel, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm at the moment I'm struggling with creating teaching material for bachelor and master students which don't have a sociological background and not the, you can say this, the reflexivity that is involved in sociological studies, which usually have a very critical approach to everything that is out there. And for example, I'm doing courses for environmental resources management master. And I'm also doing some modules for those who are studying economics. And I think it's a very crucial question at the moment. How do I get students? I mean, the time you study is a time of your life where you can open up your mind, and it's very important to open up your mind for a lot of things and think beyond like usual categories and usual ideas of evolution and development and so on. And I think this going beyond, this question of going beyond is very crucial. And I'm really struggling with how to invite people to go beyond something. For example, thinking business, going beyond the idea of business. I mean, we talk about a lot about sustainable business model and sustainable management of everything there is, but maybe the idea of business is wrong in general, or the idea of managing something is wrong. I mean, it's not that I say it's wrong, but it could be wrong. And to go beyond the idea of business, maybe in thinking about economics beyond business, for example, or thinking about our relation to nature beyond the idea of management could be very interesting here. And I think, I mean, if this group is open to think about how can we invite people successfully to open up their minds and develop some new ideas, could be interesting. I'm reading at the moment a lot of literature from those people who are called the post-humanists or post-humanism, and those who are inviting people to think more in kinship to other species in the world, and other species are also plastics or metals or whatever. So to think our relation to the world differently and to immerse ourselves in the idea of ecosystems, for example. So I think, just an idea that I got, and I think this is a very interesting thing. So undisciplining our thinking and thinking also beyond disciplinary and sectoral approaches is part of it, I think.
Thank you, Mel. Jennifer, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, just a very quick comment that bridges both. One thing that Charlotte and Sarah and I had discussed is how to bring people along, whether it's undergraduate students who have no comprehension of technical systems or even economic systems, how to bring them into the conversation and not have it be so alien. And similarly in research, as we're trying to bring STS theories or psychology theories and what exists that is familiar to any audience we're speaking to, that can be leveraged and maybe expanded or built on to help, whether we're talking to colleagues from a different field or we're talking to undergraduate students who are hearing it for the first time. I think there's a lot of opportunity to say what theories or models are out there that we can teach differently, to Melanie's point, push them to go beyond, but also figuring out how to do that in the right way so that they're not just bombarded by alien ideas that they can't actually engage with or immediately shut down. That's the struggle that I have in my classrooms, trying to talk about this foreign model that students have never even encountered until this morning, and their tendency to reject it very quickly. So thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. And there's lots of activity in the chat. So I think you've clearly sort of introduced two topics there, which are of interest to others in the working group. So we'll when we're finishing up with the next steps, we'll talk about how we can take these things forward. But thank you very much for bringing those two projects to our attention. Okay, so I'd like to move on now and invite Joy and Morgan, who'd like your collaboration in the proposed writing of a book project. So Morgan or Joy, do you want to say something about this?
Yes. Yes, we just thought of an idea of the contribution of African indigenous epistemologies to the idea of circular economy. This comes from the fact that there is a lot of disenchantment with the current knowledge systems, and most of the African indigenous epistemologies have been sidelined, and they are peripherized, they are not included, and all that. So we're coming from an environment, especially in South Africa, where there have been some discontent by students about the knowledges that are being taught, that are alienating, and they are not addressing. And there is also an issue of the knowledges of equilibrium. These are the knowledges that sometimes we feel that we are seeking solutions from the knowledges that are a problem, and it can't work, because if we look, for instance, in the economics, the current economics and the capitalist economy, that is really extractive to the environment and destructive to the environment, and then we also look for solution in that kind of knowledge system, it becomes a problem. So we're trying to say, let's look at other knowledges that have never been given a chance to shape the future, to question and think things. And looking at also focusing on the issue of the cognitive empire, to say, but us coming from a colonial background, a background of being a colonized people, we have realized that, but it is not only the physical colonization, but there is a cognitive empire that needs to be dealt with at the knowledge level. That's why we want to pitch things there, at the issue of generating another way of seeing the things. The issue of knowledge is otherwise. And the border thinking, where we think outside, I think is Melaine who is talking about thinking outside what we know into something that we have never known, questioning things from outside the logic, from the exteriority of the logic of the things that are happening. Maybe I can end here and hear if there are questions.
Thank you, Morgan. So you're thinking about working on a book project, is that right? Yes, I think a book project, and also we just say African indigenous knowledges, but maybe we say indigenous knowledges from elsewhere beyond even Africa. We can because indigenous knowledges are not only in Africa, they are there in Australia, everywhere, Latin America, and all that. Maybe we expand it to cover all the regions. Thank you, Morgan. Jorg's put in the chat that the Academy of Management Review is looking for contributions to new management theory based on the African experience. It might be another potential outlet for you. But let's go to Charlotte, Mel, and then Chiara. So let's start with you, Charlotte.
Thank you. Thank you, Morgan. I think this is a wonderful idea, absolutely crucial. I would love to support you in any way I can. Obviously, the proposal in the book should come from you and be driven by you. But if we can help in any way, I think absolutely we should do that as a working group. So please let us know if we can do things, and we might even be able to contribute with a chapter or something on care economics and female work, and how that is always kind of seen as something that's outside the economy. So although it's not maybe exactly what you're looking for, we could have some exploration there. I think that would be wonderful. Absolutely would love to support it. Thank you for suggesting it.
Yes, maybe I underline this quickly to say we're not equating a social location in the epistemic location. You might not be an indigenous African in that sense, but it is about the thought of how you think things, not the social location per se, but the epistemic location. That's what will be much more interesting, to think things from the other side. That is what I would like to emphasize.
Thank you, Morgan. Mel.
Yeah, thank you for this idea. I just follow up on Charlotte saying that I love this idea, and I think it's absolutely necessary. And that's what I also meant with going beyond. I mean, it means also to learn that the evolution of humankind is full of different ideas about how the world should function, or how the world should be, and how the world should develop. And I think we have the problem that we had not only have a monoculture in the agriculture, we also have monocultures in our heads. So I think this is absolutely crucial. And the environmental resource management master and bachelor where I'm involved in teaching, they recruit, there's an international master, they recruit people from all over the world, with a big majority coming from so-called global South countries. And they and I was struggling to find sociological literature and social science literature and philosophical literature from other countries than the usual suspects. And it was really hard. And I think that it is there. I mean, there is this literature, and there are those thinkers and philosophers and so on, sociologists, but you can't find them in the internet, or you have really hard task to find them. So I would really use this book also for my courses if it's going to happen. And I think I also had the idea, like Charlotte, to think about care, the different care concepts, because I think care concepts, they transport some forms of knowledge that is something older than our new cultures of neoliberal, I don't know, doing everything. Also families are kind of managed neoliberally sometimes. And this the care economics, or the idea of care, is something old, I think, that we can maybe use here. The other idea that I had, I mean, we also have some indigenous knowledge in European countries. We just have forgotten it, maybe because here I'm new in Cottbus, the university in Cottbus, which is in a part of Germany where there is a Sorbian minority. So the Sorbs, they have some customs and some old knowledge and so on that you can describe as indigenous. So I just got the idea, it could be interesting to look on how they, I don't know, define consumption and production and community and so on. So it could be also interesting to look in their own country, to those, like an archaeologist maybe. And the other idea that I had is that I have a colleague who did his master thesis, comes from Ghana. He did his master thesis on those workers in Agbogloshi, on the electronic waste networks, you can say. And he also tried to make this indigenous perspective relevant, because many people look at those workers and they say, oh, those poor workers, they are ruining their health, and they are working with our garbage and so on. And I mean, this one perspective, which is also might be also important to get some political attention, but there's other perspectives, that there are people here who try to develop some sort of self-efficacy, and who are trying to find their way in the global economy, and their role in the global economy. I think this is also an important perspective, to see that there are people who get some identity out of what they are doing, and some means also for their everyday life and so on. So I think there's also some work in my team that might be interesting to contribute. And I also had a master thesis, supervised a master thesis on repair networks in Ghana. And there you can also see that the repair networks are much more advanced in Ghana than there are in Germany. I mean, Europe, repair is dying out, and there's no like repair infrastructure, and in Ghana it's totally different. So there is a really like those very dense, intensive networks of doing repair and of kind of realizing the repair of things. Yeah, that's my a bit long contribution.
Thank you, Mel. Finally, we'll go to Chiara, and then in interest of time, we'll move on. Chiara.
I just wanted to mention that in Canada, there was a researcher in British Columbia, I think Karen Baga, that have worked a lot with infrastructure indigenous people in Canada. So maybe that's where a place where to look if you look for also like collaboration or finding cases in other countries. I think Morgan mentioned, but also Melanie said that looking for like papers. It's not exactly on circular economy, but she wrote on nexus, water, energy, food nexus, infrastructure and placemaking, and involving specifically the relation between transformation, systemic transformation, and indigenous culture. But one mentioned, and she's called Karen Baga. She's really, really good. I've been meeting her once, but she's a bit of a one of my gods in the sense that I think she's really, really good also. But a part of this is like, I think in general, when we talk about indigenous and perspective and the transformation today, for example, even in developed countries, like even in Denmark, Copenhagen is highly colonized by corporation. So in that sense, big companies or big corporations that own now even land. So they actually transform the city. Nature, colonization of nature. It's a really big present thing in our environment, in our world as well as it is in yours. I mean, of course, in yours the conflicts or the contrast is much more visible, I think. In our maybe is much more silence, but it is extreme. The level of gentrification that our city are living, it's excluding completely what could be considered indigenous people. I mean, there is no way now that a normal person can buy an apartment in Copenhagen. So it's in that sense you could talk about colonization of nature and space and places. So that there is a different type of colonization, but or an advanced, or maybe be very similar, but less discussed in that terms. And that could be also an interesting point of view to maybe to make relevant, also more relevant to the eyes of those that are not looking into. So to actually create a problem that it's like an opportunity to interact with this type of process, to exactly against the neoliberalism and so how capitalism as well act on these issues. So in that sense, it could be an interesting perspective to look into, also for finding parallels on processes that are maybe different scale, but very, very similar maybe.
Thank you, Chiara. Morgan, there's lots of interest in the chat, so make sure you have a look through that. I've seen that you are responding already. So thank you.
I'm willing also to collaborate if you're interested in that direction.
Great, thank you, Chiara. Thanks to everyone for their contributions there. Moving on, and next it's me on the I'm next on the agenda. So I'll share just a few slides that are prepared.
Paul, I just want to make sure, am I in the agenda?
Yes, next job.
Okay.
Yeah, and we've got 20 minutes left, so we'll accelerate a little bit. So this is my idea for a sort of a structured a way of working together with a more short-term objective. What I'd like to do is to assemble a group of interdisciplinary academics, perhaps with some external stakeholders, to explore the challenges around development and circular regenerative practices. This is complex, it's multifaceted, It calls for different types of change, organizational, technological, institutional. We're talking new norms, new rules, new collaborations, new forms of coordination, new assets, new markets. There's relatively little research around how developing countries are adopting circular models and how their structural conditions, such as vast informal economies, are hindering or facilitating that adoption. So I'd like to sort of investigate this a little bit. A first test might be to understand those processes of economic formalization, how they take place, how we can encourage them, if possible, through circular principles. A second test might be around understanding how the circular economy can be rolled out in highly biodiverse places, such as the Amazon. So, for instance, questions like what are the risks of developing new industries that, while circular, still place intensive pressure on natural resources? So the way I've thought possibly of doing this would be to, as a starting point, would be to work on a professional development workshop proposal to the Academy of Management for summer 2022. The theme of the conference is around creating a better world together, and the foundational questions that they're asking around the need to create or improve future institutions, relationships, systems, processes. I think these are related to this, to the topic that I'd like to pursue. And as well as sort of investigating a topic, I'd like to be creative in the way that we do it, which would include a process before, during, after the PDW. There are various different formats that we could use, but whatever we choose, it's got to be innovative, it's got to be interactive, it's got to be integrative, provocative, andragogical, so about adult education, and developmental. So one of the ways that I think we could meet those criteria would be to organise a session around different interdisciplinary groupings. First of all, that belong to the Academy, such as entrepreneurship, technology and innovation management, operations and supply chain management, organisations and the natural environment, and then beyond as well. To call for different that wouldn't usually attend the Academy of Management. And then the initial idea would be to get these different interdisciplinary groupings together and challenge them to debate tension points around circular economy and formalization. And I think the value added would stem from bringing together these different perspectives and exploring what Mel described as some of these itchy, scratchy interfaces. So we can discuss what those points of tension might be, but it could be around how do we encourage economic development and environmental sustainability at the same time in a highly biodiverse region? How can we develop management models for variety in contrast to standardized intensive agriculture, scaling up of production? How can we prioritize environmental sustainability in regions where poverty, informality, and controlling illegal activities are the government's main concern? From a consumption perspective, how can we encourage ethical consumption that protects biodiversity? So I don't just want the PDW to be an end in itself, but to be a springboard, the first rung on a ladder of working together. So this PDW would hopefully form a group that could then look to use the proposal as something to develop for an article or the grouping to work together on a future external grant. So here's the sort of timeline that I'm imagining. Over the next couple of months, work on this proposal to Academy Management. It's just sort of 6 to 8 pages. We'd know whether it was successful around spring. So then we've got further time to think about the practicalities of making this a successful event. It would be in the Academy Management Conference in August. And then from there, we'd develop that proposal and also work with the findings that came from the PDW into, like I say, maybe an article or a funding application. I shall stop there. I shall stop sharing. Jennifer. Yes. I'm looking for people to sort of co-create this session with me. You know, I've just got some sort of ideas about how it might work, and for those of who might be interested in collaborating on this and thinking about what those tension points might be, and being creative in how we think of bringing these different disciplinary perspectives together, and how you could invite externals in who don't usually appear at or wouldn't usually go to the Academy of Management. Anything around that, I would very much welcome. Adriana.
Yes, Paul. Let me just put my hand down here. I think very interesting. I love this idea, how to collaborate, to make this kind of PDW and to make something different out of it. And I can suggest, I'm just finishing a work. It's kind of a consultancy work that I'm doing, but pro bono, for an association here in Brazil that they work directly with indigenous communities from Amazon region, especially in the Xingu area. This Xingu area, I don't know if you know it, but they are very at risk because it's in the borderline of the Amazon, in the beginning of the agriculture, the extensively agribusiness area. So they are really endangered communities. And they have a very interesting work. This association, it's kind of an NGO. It's called the Instituto Socioambiental, Social Environmental Institute. They have a beautiful work. They have created a kind of a certification process for ensuring that products from indigenous communities can reach external markets here, something like in the south of Brazil, and even in Europe or the US, to sell these products, but with a certification, and to make these connections between these indigenous communities and how to sell in a just and ethic way. I think it's a very interesting work. They have developed totally bottom up. So they have included a lot of, it's a very beautiful and interesting process to do this ethic commerce, but well done from the bottom up. I think it could be an opportunity. We have made like, I think 35 interviews. We have a lot of material already gathered. And I think we can share with you. I can ask them if they want to take part in this project. I think it could be very interesting to join and to make this proposal.
That's excellent. Thank you, Adriana. And this has stemmed from a British Academy funded project that we have around the Peruvian Amazon and circular practices. And so it sounds very, very related to what you've been talking about. So thank you. We'll pick that up. Mel.
Yeah, just two terms that I would find interesting in this context. So I think last year we also tried to develop a PDW workshop. We still have some notes, and there might be some issues that could be related to that one. So not issues, there might be some aspects that we can also use for this workshop, or you can use for this workshop, because the idea was we had kind of the same intention to create some kind of some irritation or some sort of, you know what I mean. And I think one aspect that I would find interesting now, also inspired by what Adriana said, is how to organize participation and how to organize some sort of just transition process, where participation is not only something that is in the start of a project or of an innovation or some sort of change, but also participation is part of the stabilization in the end, because I'm involved in some projects where they have participatory technology development, so people can ask a lot and they can kind of participate in the process and also have a lot of power in this process. But in the end, if the technology is then stabilized in some sort of practices, then they are again the consumer, so, or again those who are kind of related to what happens in the end, but they don't participate in the production anymore. So I think this is an interesting aspect, not only to have participation at the beginning, ask people about their opinion and give them some power, but also to have some sort of stabilized power relations or something. So this could be interesting.
I like that idea very much. So thank you for that, Mel, and thank you to others that have put some encouragement and willingness to join with me. So I'll pick up with you afterwards. In the interest of time, I'm going to move on. Joe, on the Belmont, I think.
Can you give me sharing?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, got it.
We got it.
Okay, this is a quick thing. It's a little bit boring than the others because this is an ongoing type of project, but it's something that the working group can be involved in. We have a Belmont Project, CRA, which is a collaborative research action that had the con was involved with, the SSCP con. I think it's around sustainable production and consumption. Our group was involved in over a couple of years, if not longer, putting in some circular economy stuff. If you're not familiar with the Belmont Forum, it's a funding agency similar to the one for the TRPPPP, whatever it is, TPPR, whatever, where they have multiple funding agencies. Just as a quick look, here is the site, the Belmont Forum site. Where is it? Collaborative. This is the Belmont Forum site. And they have CRAs. Now, this CRA is the latest one. It has not come out. It will be coming out in early February. And these are some of the funding agencies that are involved from multiple countries. A number of our countries are represented here, similar to the TARPP, but it's a little bit broader. Our champion in this case happens to be the most, which is Taipei. And they will be trying to sell the proposal. This is a version of the proposal that we submitted. And I don't know if this is the final one. This is the final draft we submitted. And then it went through revisions and so on. So a lot of this supposedly is still in there. I don't have access for some reason. I wasn't given access to the final one that they had, but it's not come out yet. So the call for papers will be coming out. And what we were looking at, if you notice, one of the first things is circular economies as a major principle. And we discussed these three areas as being part of it. This was part of our scoping document. We integrated it into there. So the working group is very much involved in this proposal. Now, it's not clear if the full con is submitting one, but I have a feeling that they said con members can start preparing project proposal ideas and look at possible partnerships as consortia and that need to be developed. Okay, so they are allowing us flexibility as a working group, it seems, based on this email that we got from RIA. It went to all the working groups and so on. RIA is the secretariat of the Future Earth thing for the con that we have. One of the things she did mention is that there is a webinar going to be on November 9th related to what the con is going to be doing with the Belmont Forum. So some involvement from us, anybody could be involved in that. It just doesn't have to be the ones who are like leading the working groups. So please get involved if you need the connections. I think we have the emails, Paul, we could share with everybody if necessary. And can any of our ideas we are currently considering being linked? The ones that were just presented. I think it's wide open. This is research and it's international research foundations that are going to be supporting this. And that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Joe. It will be an excellent opportunity for us to collaborate on another large funding bid, likely to be next year before we would do the majority of the work. But we'll know more on the 9th, which is next week.
The call will be open in the first quarter of 2022, so sometime January, February, March. I think, I don't know exactly when, but that's when they're going to be opening it. And supposedly we have the inside track because we helped write it up and we went through the review process and so on. So these agencies are going to be selling this internationally. And most of the Belmont Forum ones have to be multiple countries involved.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that that's the case. And this is why it's a valuable thing that we have already developed.
Yeah.
Maybe we could take the proposal that we already wrote or integrate new ideas as they were discussed today.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. I think that experience of developing a very similar research proposal this year will stand us in good stead for working on that. So again, if you're interested in joining us, and there's that workshop next week where we'll learn a bit more from the Secretariat of Future Earth about it. So let us know. Now then, I think we are I'm conscious to let you all go and finish on time, so we're coming up to 2:30. The next steps for this will be that we will upload an edited video, we hope, to the Slack site. We have this Slack resource which we probably could be better at using, so we'll upload a version of this now. We'll try and break it into the different projects. Then I think we'll put maybe a Google Doc where you can indicate if you'd like to be involved in any of these initiatives going forward. And I think the next step will be for colleagues to get together virtually around sort of organise their own get-togethers for each of the projects that we've just heard about. And then we will meet again in the new year and hopefully hear about what progress there's been with these project ideas. So what we'll do is we'll send round an email to everybody. We'll send around the links to the special issues, summary of the book, any links to the Belmont and Future Earth that we've talked about. We'll sort out the Slack, and then good luck with progress with each of the groups, and we'll see you all again in the new year.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.